the Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Hello and welcome back to the show. We're following up on our podcast of whether a business can create a caring machine, particularly through the use of AI. What does that look like and why would you do it? As part of that, there was this emotional customer journey process, and that's what we're diving into today. I'm Stephen Skash here once again with Tulio Siragusa and Ash Mar. So let's recap real quick that four-stage newly proposed customer journey that's based on emotions. So you've got this first stage of this customer journey that is emotion recognition. So identifying the customer's emotional situation accurately. How can you do that? We talked about that in the last show and how the difficulties might be with AI and things like that. So you got this first stage, emotion recognition, then it jumps to emotion understanding. So you kind of express empathetic understanding of the customer's emotion. Then you go into the next stage, which is emotion management. You win the customer's heart by providing helpful recommendations. And then lastly, you have this emotional connection stage. Establish an emotional connection with the customer. This is when your customer will ride and die with you. You know, if you're able to win them over really well, they'll be a customer for life, and you see that lifetime value really come to play in this last stage. So, guys, let's dive into this emotion recognition stage. So, if you know your business, this might be a stage where, you know, you get to know your business a little better, where what are the pain points, the emotions around those pain points. Tulio, what's this look like on the ground? What can we do to kind of pull this out and apply it to our business in these later stages?
Yeah, this is actually like in design thinking principles. This is the very first stage. It's the empathize stage, right? I like to think of it first is curiosity, and then is empathizing. So it's really how do you go about identifying the emotional state, not just the transactional need of a customer, but the experience, the desire for something that they want to feel. How do you go doing that? So there's a few things today that make this a little easier. You know, in the past, you had to go and interview a lot of people and talk with them and create a whole community of potential customers or users, and continuously learn from them. And that is still highly encouraged. I would encourage doing that. But there's some tools now that can help this tremendously. Like, for example, there's AI chatbots that also do sentiment analysis at the same time. So it's not going beyond just kind of fielding the call, so to speak, but actually analyzing using natural language processing to detect things like frustration, anger, or even the happiness level of a customer's message, right? How fast they type, you know, did they type accurately, or is it kind of gibberish? You know, that can tell a lot about the state of mind of someone. And then there's also, that's if you're using chatbots. Then if someone's calling a customer service center, there's voice recognition software that can also detect changes in tone, in pitch, in the speed of the call. And again, that can indicate emotional distress or satisfaction. And then finally, for like online scenarios, you can use facial recognition, where you have visual interaction, possibly on a video call, for example, right? You can use facial recognition to identify emotions such as facial expression. This technology can actually even be used in a brick and mortar scenario, where someone, for example, is on a line and there could be camera set up where it does the analysis and can provide a pop-up to the end user saying this particular customer is angry or this particular customer is happy. There's a lot of technology that can do that. But the end goal here is to really identify who to serve better and faster. So, you know, an example would be an AI chat back on a retail website, for example. Depending on the customer level of frustration, it might immediately escalate it to go talk to a human being, right? You know, there's nothing more frustrating when you need help and you know it's going to be a live agent that can help you, and you sort of feel like you're in the, you know, the menu's jail, so to speak, and you just get even more frustrated because you just want to speak to someone. You need to speak to someone. So those kinds of technology in action, what do you do with it? You can escalate a call. You can have someone, react to it faster. Perhaps a supervisor or manager could deal with a circumstance that would require that immediate attention. But the goal is to use the emotional state understanding of the customer and then take action on it in a way that serves them better.
Hey, Ash, I'm thinking about what Tula is saying here. We're talking about some of these futuristic things where you've got, possibly, you're being monitored even, in a store, stuff like that. But as far as like the average person right now, they're used to using like Google Analytics or something, right?
Yeah.
And that's somewhat hard to tell the emotion on in there. I think where sometimes we went through an extra step would be like video recordings, right, Tibbety?
Yeah. So that, and when we're talking about that level of analytics, we're trying to see what a user is doing on the website. There's obviously tools that heat map and show video recordings of how they're responding, where they're going on the site. But when it comes to the emotional understanding of your customers, as marketers, our job is to, we build out these customer avatars. We try to find the deepest desires of our customers from the outside based on our own perception or our own understanding, our own research, right? And I think one thing that we can do, at least in the short term, as these tools are becoming more prevalent and a lot of the kinks are being worked out to where how we could use them, where they could understand sentiment at a higher level. I think it's being able to collaborate with some of the tools we have in existence right now. Let's say take the Chat GPT, the Gronk. Not too sure about Google Gemini as of yet, but tools like that, where if you have an idea of a pain point of that customer, you have to imagine how much knowledge base that the current AI tools that we have right now at this current time with the right prompt engineer, the amount of knowledge they have on our customers, right? So if you're doing that customer avatar research and you're trying to understand the deep desires and the emotional pain points, maybe that could be a great prompt where that you can go back and forth with the AI to get a little bit deeper understanding so that you could build out the messaging needed to correctly satisfy that customer. I think that a good marketer really is known how good their avatar is and how deep the research went. But to take the level that marketers are limited based on their own experience and how deep they're willing to go. Maybe one marketer has a certain set of frameworks on how she does their research versus another marketer's set of frameworks, and you're going off of their research, right? Kind of like an opinion of a doctor. One doctor has his own opinion, another doctor has his opinion. One could be in Florida, the other one's in California. You really don't know. You're going based on that person's opinion. So they always recommend, a second opinion. Now imagine if a marketer who's in that area of looking up, trying to create his customer avatar, actually, had the skills or the understanding to engage with the AI back and forth to go a little bit deeper to a level that maybe he couldn't or he or she couldn't go to. I think that's something that could be in the short term until some of these tools are inked out. You could try to gather some sentiment of what those deep pain points are and what that messaging could look like. So that's my idea. Tuli, I would love to get some of your feedback on that in terms of short term,
I think we have to look at where we came from, where we are right now, and where we're going. And where we're going kind of takes us back to where we came from, but better, right? So in the past, you had to go and interact with a human being in a brick and mortar scenario. That's how you got things done, right? Yeah. Then we added customer service. You call a number and you speak to someone. So it's a two-way communication that was in place. Yeah. Then online came and you could do all of the service yourself. So it became self-service. So it's not two-way, right? There's no one interacting with you. You're interacting with an experience. So the user experience, the UI, became critically important to create a good, seamless experience with someone. But then we started adding AI bots, right? Or even chat bots and now AI bots, which has taken us back to the interaction that we lost, right? From brick and mortar. And then making it more intuitive and smarter. Now, it still requires the ability to recognize the person. When they came to the store, you could visually see someone if they were mad or upset. So how do you do that with a machine? So even just simple things like having a smiley face, unhappy face, angry face that someone can click on that states their state of being in that moment could be another interaction that takes place. But ultimately, we're not there yet. But ultimately, what will happen is, and this talks to the next generation of user experience. It's not going to be the visual experience. It's going to be avatars where you can talk to live in person, like you're having a real conversation like we used to have when we went to the store, right? So these avatars will be intuitive and intelligent. So you're feeling like you have a conversation with someone. It can analyze based on a video chat your sentiments, et cetera, and then it could escalate to a actual human being if necessary. But ultimately, we always go back to how things were. Digital has an interesting evolution where it digitizes what we were used to, but then somehow the way it really evolves is it takes us back to what we were used to, but in a streamlined, efficient, and more effective way using digital. So I think that's going to be ultimately the future. And those companies who recognize and begin to implement those are going to be the first to create that emotional understanding with their customers. And they're going to be the ones who dominate their space, their industry.
That's incredibly powerful. I'm just thinking, as you were explaining that, I'm like, wait, this makes total sense. Imagine a tool that is doing the customer avatar work itself by simply interacting with customers as they're coming in. And then they're able to tell you, oh yeah, these are the deepest desires of your customers based on all this data we've accumulated and everything we understand. And it's creating the avatar in real time. That is an amazing future to live in. I mean, that's a huge tool for marketers down the road and for businesses, I can imagine, massive organizations and so on.
It's like 4D analytics or something.
Yeah.
Where, before we were playing in this sort of 2D environment, I think, and we're kind of moving ahead with this for better, for worse. I mean, it sounds a little dystopian at times.
Yeah, but it's also true even in the empathetic marketing, right? We talk about that, right? It's bringing back what the experience you used to have when you lived in a village and everybody knew each other and the store owner knew you. And there was an understanding, a human level understanding. So we're bringing that back by introducing empathetic marketing to essentially recreate that experience, but in a more efficient, scalable way, where the village is global. It's not limited to a specific geography. But if you look at everything that's happened digitally, that's the evolution of it. We go back to where we started, but in a scalable, global way.
Yeah.
And that's, by the way, the secret to a good digital strategy if you're watching this.
Yeah, I mean, you got to figure out the pain points, and you got to figure out what your customers are feeling, what their emotions are. There are 31 feeling clusters like that you can specifically address if you want, and you're probably addressing the more of the negative ones, like your frustration with something, right? Those kind of different pain points that you've got with a particular situation. So as a marketer, you want to be there when someone's like trying to deal with this frustration and come up with a solution. So it's really important to not just go into your analytics and you can kind of see what they're doing on the site. You can see the heat maps. You can watch some of those video recordings of user activity and maybe you see them looping or doing things or getting confused, but it's really hard to tell sort of that next element there is what's going on in their head. We've done for years and years, demographics and psychographics, understanding what's going on in this person's life, kind of, life stages, things like that. But it's still not in that moment emotion, right? It's still not getting to that level. So that's why you're doing surveys, you're doing some sentiment analysis, maybe there's social listening tools and stuff like that where you get a feel for what's going on in a community of users. And so for like maybe a retailer, a clothing retailer or something, maybe they'll send out like personalized surveys or something just to gauge customer satisfaction and you get a feel for their emotional responses. And then from there, they can, maybe rate those feelings and figure out, okay, where's my customer base at? What do I need to address? And then you can move that on really to this next stage, which is the emotional understanding stage. So this is where, as we mentioned earlier, you're expressing empathetic understanding of the customer's emotion. You kind of identified it, and now you're like, come to my website, and now I'm going to address it from that sort of standpoint. Ash, so what does this look like for you? You've identified these customer avatars, the emotional situation that they're in. Now you're basically starting to work on either messaging or your website content, things like that. Take us into like some on the ground tactics there.
Absolutely. So marketing 101, even though we're in the digital age now, the principles stay the same. As a marketer, we're working on our messaging and how to amplify that messaging. So I think at that stage, that level, once you're able to really deeply understand the desires, the pains, the emotional challenges that our customers are dealing with, and you're able to, craft not a complete message, but an idea of what the intent and context of these individuals are, so that now you're in phase 2, creating and drafting the message and meeting them where they are, right, at that stage of the funnel. So if they're in that consideration stage, maybe acknowledging that they've already been looking for help and they haven't found the answers yet, and that we might be able to have an alternative solution that's different than what they've already seen, right? But it's acknowledging that pain, right? So it depends on what vertical that is. It's acknowledging that person, maybe acknowledging something that is so deep for them that we already are aware of the frustration that people deal with. So being very specific to like, hey, I know you probably have already looked at other competitors, or you want to call them competitors, but you've looked at other products and you're probably still searching because you haven't found the right one. And I can understand how frustrating that is for you to be searching and searching and searching. So to be able to acknowledge at that level and create that messaging, I think that's the right. And then learning and understanding how to amplify it. Once you find that, once you have a breakdown of that customer and you have that right message, how do we amplify it to as many of those like-minded or liked individuals that we can? So I think that's where it's at. I think the only thing I see that problematic with this down the road is how there's good and evil with these tools, right? And then I'll give you an example. Good is using the information we have to create messaging that is beneficial. Maybe in some of the context that Tulio mentioned in terms of customer service, when a person comes in and changing their experience and helping them in that area of amplifying their overall experience through quality customer service by understanding certain things that are going on. But in the world of marketing today, as you've learned from what Facebook's data has shared with us, that the more extreme some of the content is, the more viewership it gets. I think the problematic could come in that phase of the messaging is if we're trying to accomplish a goal where we're trying to create virality, and the algorithm is aware that virality comes from doing crazy things like jumping off a bridge. I could see a little double-edged sword here saying, oh yeah, this will resonate if you want to try to create viral content versus trying to actually help someone in their experience. So I think I just want to throw that out there because I thought about that. I'm like, wait, this tool could be used for great benefit and optimizing someone's experience. But as marketers, as we're aware that there's viral marketing happening these days, trying to capture people's attention is getting harder. It's the space of attention is more crowded than it's ever been. It's going to be even more crowded now that things are democratized with AI. So what kind of issues can we run into with messaging at that point? Can that be regulated in some fashion? Who knows, right? But going back to the main point of the topic, I didn't want me to digress. In this phase, it is discovering what is that message and how do we amplify it.
Well, let's get into that dark side a little bit. I think a lot of people are concerned with AI in that it can be this sort of alpha persuasion tool where it just knows all the levers to pull and buttons to push and just to get you into a state and then make you make some sort of decision, because it can just be very sophisticated. It's not quite there yet, but 3 or 4 years from now.
Exactly. We're talking about messaging, right? So imagine if it understands our emotions and what frustrates us. It crafts messaging that will amplify frustration to make that person take action. Where's the moral? Where are the moral lines there, right? So, that's the question.
And this might sound a little controversial, but AI can be trained to have a number of responses. So, for example, you call a customer service center, you might be frustrated, and the automatic response is, I am sorry that you're having this bad experience, right? And so it's like they repeat it over and over every time you complain about something. At some point, it just feels disingenuous. It's like, you're not really sorry. You're just saying that because that's what your script says. So it's not really connecting. It's not really showing empathy. It's just words, right? So that's the difference. It's not about what you say. It's the timing. It's the tone. It's what you say does make a difference, but it's got to be sort of relative to what's going on in that moment. And AI can permutate so many different scenarios that could be trained to recognize when it's appropriate to do one response versus the other. But at the same time, I think there's also needed for humans to have that kind of training too. There's a little bit of empathetic training that needs to take place, and it's not happening. You're just getting trained on what to say, not what to feel. And that's a more complex challenge, to be trained on what to feel. And oddly enough, this is why I think it's controversial. AI can actually be trained to respond better to a feeling than a human in some cases, which is kind of sad, but that's just the way it is. So you want to leverage that to your advantage because chances are that the AI platform can respond in a way that connects better emotionally with that customer's specific need in that moment.
Yeah, they have shown some studies that are like, hey, we're doing sort of split test between human and AI, and going through that customer service response, and AI was just beating the humans. It was like 80-something% satisfaction level versus 50 or 60% on the human side. So yeah, we've got our work cut out for us to really be real, I guess, to be empathetic.
I think
because AI will be able to do
what's
it.
crazy? Yeah. We've heard the expression when someone sounds robotic, right? Like, we tend to sound more robotic in these situations, just spewing the words that are on the screen if you're in a customer service center. Mm-hmm. Yet the machine is being trained to be more human-like, more empathetic, right? Less robotic. So you're absolutely right. It's the, there's no ego, there's no feelings. The machine's like, they're not carrying whatever happened that morning with them that puts them in the bad mood, right? So there's an advantage of that, that it doesn't carry that baggage of, having a bad day, for example, and everybody gets the brunt of that because you're having a bad day. The machine doesn't have those feelings, so it can apply those learnings a lot better. So it's just, that's why it's a little interesting how some machine, I'd rather have that than someone who's in a bad mood that day. But we can train people to raise their consciousness and learn a little bit more emotional intelligence skills. Then you have a really powerful combination, because you're not going to get rid of humans in these scenarios. You need them, but you need to elevate to be more emotionally aware.
So I have to piggyback off what Tulio just said too. It's having humans that are at that higher conscious level. Because I think one of my things I was about to throw in there as a wrench was the challenge is going back to in the beginning of this podcast, we're talking about the Northern Light and the mission of the organizations. If they don't have that higher conscious goals in mind, and they're not moving at that level of paradigm where they really care about having that deeper connection with their customers, their employees, having that Northern Star, these things have to be programmed into the AI. And yes, it is more than capable, right, to do better than we can. But then let's take Google as the example with one of its products. I could list a bunch of them. Let's just take PMax, for example, with its main objective being to get leads. Once you send it off to go after that, it gets leads at any means necessary. Even some that we've witnessed have been fraudulent leads that have been coming in from people who didn't even fill out the form, right? And I've seen this happen a couple times. Now, I don't know if that's exactly with this specific product, but the idea is that this product is going after the ball. And if you don't give it a specific parameter of what that ball is, it's just going to go after it, right? So then we have organizations that will say, hey, we want to try to maximize our profits or maximize our level of attention without even thinking about the higher consciousness or the emotional.
Yeah, Ash, this is a really good point. I want to underline a little bit here. So think about it from this way. So we're just talking about, let me see if I can explain that, what you just said. We're talking about a campaign in Google, and you've got a goal of, say, a lead. And if you're getting garbage leads, or maybe you've got the wrong goal, you're going to have AI optimizing towards garbage. Yep. So now the human side, if you don't have a good higher purpose with your company, if that's not your higher goal and it's some garbage goal, then everyone in the organization is going to be doing sort of garbage along the way. But if they're all aligned on this higher purpose, then you're all going to be rowing in the same direction on a very powerful goal. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
As you were saying it, I was thinking, oh my gosh, the world of AI CEO one day, where if you don't prompt it correctly, it literally, just say hypothetical. Let's create a hypothetical scenario. We could write a book on this, right? We create an AI CEO, and you only give it one job: maximize profits. And that's its Northern Star. You could imagine
if that's going to be the goal, we're dead. We
already have that. We already have that kind of robotic CEO in place.
We already have that, but it's going to do that person's job 100 times better and maybe 100 ruthless. If that's the only goal, if the only goal is that one investor purpose or bottom line purpose, we're toast. It's got to be people. It's got to be your customers. It's got to be your employees, it's community, and investors and your vendors. It's got to be that conscious capitalist approach. If we're just optimizing toward
that's the whole point. That's these CEOs have become robotic. They just profit. And not surprised why Forbes and some other magazine actually recently covered that the greatest threat to jobs from AI is actually the CEO, right? Yeah. Imagine a lot of these CEOs, let's face it, a lot of them are borderline megalomaniacs. I mean, they become that way to survive this need to serve the shareholders at all costs, right? So they're robotic towards that mission. Whereas I can program AI to be empathetic, to be caring, to do all that while also creating an environment where people care about each other and collaborate. And it's going to beat that CEO any day, instantly. So ultimately what will win is emotions. Those who are emotionally intelligent and aware will win. The machine is being trained to do that. If you find yourself having difficulty being emotionally aware of what's going on, you might need to start focusing on that, because the machine will beat you to it and put you out of a job. It's just the way it is, right? So we have an opportunity to elevate and start to get out of this robotic consciousness thinking and be a little bit more human-centric, because the machines will beat us to it otherwise.
I want to throw something thought-provoking on that note, Tulio. That's actually a really great point. I think that's where the fear of AI has come in, is that AI came in too fast and we weren't consciously ready for it. I think that is the fear, is that there are too many people who aren't in that conscious state, who are going to have control of this very powerful technology and are not going to be able to use it the way it was meant to be used. Versus if our consciousness was there, right, then AI is the gas that's going to fuel us to greatness, right? In this case,
do you remember when we were kids and we played hide and seek?
Yeah.
Ready or not, here I come. Yep. That's what AI is saying. Ready or not,
here I come. Yep.
We are not ready. We are not ready.
Yeah. And it's concerning when you have, and again, I don't want to digress too much from the podcast, but we have Sam Altman and Elon Musk disagreeing with each other, and I have no idea what they're disagreeing on, but that could be the battle, right, of consciousness versus, lack of consciousness. And these are fears that, a lot of companies and individuals in the AI space are concerned about. They're trying to figure out solutions for this.
So here's where I plug the AI CMO that we're building. So go down to aicmo.io, sign up on the wait list. But the first thing we want you to do in there, you tell us about your business, but we want you to work on a higher purpose. We've got tools in there for crafting your purpose, and it's going to bring in conscious capitalist ideas, things like that. We want you to define a higher purpose, one that's not just, solely shareholder investor based purpose, which, we go back to Milton Friedman talking about, profits as the sole thing in business. But we want you to articulate this higher consciousness purpose, because that's then going to get carried through into your marketing and into things where we're hoping, we can use some of these 31 feeling clusters and emotions and make emotional connections, but we want to do it right. We don't want to be, building this machine that's going to be solely based on profits. It's got to be considering people, planet as well. So this is what our goal is with that, is building this higher consciousness, empathetic sort of CMO tool to help CMOs now, to help marketing staffs, to help them when AI is going to be all up in their business and running their business for the next forever, right? So it's like, let's do this right. Let's make sure we're all aligned with higher purpose, which we are not. Most companies right now, it's just one sole purpose. They don't even know how to think about the higher purpose. And that's where you're going to get this malicious AI running wild when someone has an AI CEO that's based on this one single purpose. Yeah. If we take that purpose of profit only, we are toast. We're 100% toast. So we're coming at it with the CMO side of things, because we think this is the keepers of your story, right? As a CMO, we're the tellers of your story. We're the ones, we want to get the whole company aligned to tell this higher purpose story. And we need help from the CEOs. Yes, we need help from HR. But if this is what we're about, this is what we're talking about. We're talking the talk. Now let's walk the walk with our business so that we're walking toward this higher purpose together. So let's pull it back in here a little bit to the topic of this emotional understanding stage, just to something really simple. If you're in, say, financial services, which some of us do that all the time, all day, is we're marketing financial services. And you've got customers who come in there who aren't familiar with all the financial jargon and that kind of stuff. It's very complicated. So an emotional understanding in this stage would be, okay, yeah, I understand these are some very complex topics that we're talking about. Here's some blog posts that break it down more simply. Here's some videos that break it down more simply. This is empathetic storytelling right here, to make you feel more comfortable, to simplify it, to feel your pain, and to help you through that process. That's kind of what we're talking about in this stage, right? It's bottom line, delivering and speaking to them in a way that works. So let's hop on now to the next stage in this process, the third stage of this emotional 4-stage customer journey. This is emotion management. So you win the customer's heart by providing helpful recommendations. And so here, we've done our ad work. We've sort of brought them to the site, or they found us in a search engine for something. And now, what are we talking about here as far as actual tactics? Oh, wait, Ash, I wanted to ask you this question. Mm-hmm. On that last stage, do you see us building this emotional understanding stage that we were just talking about? Do you see us potentially now building campaigns based and segmented by emotion?
Yes, as long as we understand the context of that person's emotion, we're able to create their messaging. So I always, at the end of the day, before we talked about emotions, we talked about context, the reason for a person searching for a product or needing the product. In this case, we're acknowledging and creating the asset that's going to meet and satisfy that emotional issue that they're essentially looking for a solution for. So you're satisfying their need. So yes, I think when you talk about we're always creating messaging for context. We're going to be essentially creating messaging for the different array of emotions. It's just figuring out what those emotions are, because they could be different from customer to customer, right?
Yeah, I think on a technical side, a lot of times maybe we've done like awareness campaign or different funnel stages. Now you could really do this sort of emotional campaign. Hey, I'm targeting just this one emotion of this customer pain point, and this is how I'm segmenting, is just by emotion. That's what this whole campaign is about. And now I'm going to just split test, multivariate test different ads based on this one emotion, and that's what I'm solely focused on. And then I've got another campaign that's focusing on maybe another emotion. So I could see, as we get into this 3D 4D world of this emotional understanding versus this straight analytics, that we start doing more of that.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about the emotional management here. So this might be something like, a good example I can think of is we have this merchant services credit card processing company. And this is such an awful industry a lot of times, where you've got these people just trying to trick businesses and things like that, and taking all these tactics where you don't really see what you're really being charged. And so our processor is this really good company that has, very plain language on, this is exactly what you're going to pay. And so they understand the pain points, they understand the bad actors in the business. And this is how they're differentiating, is not just by low price, but it's just by being genuine, making these caring communications, and they're really delivering on the pain points in that process. And so that's where we are. They're understanding where I'm at with my frustrations as, someone may be building a website and I need a credit card processor that's, not just some guy who just called me up and is trying to sell me, oh, I'm going to get you a great rate, blah, blah, blah. And then, 6 months from now, you're paying twice as much as what you would have paid somewhere else because you got tricked. So they understand that I'm having a difficult time navigating that space to make this decision. And so all their content is really based on that. So this is what we're talking about, right? As far as on the ground tactics for this emotional management. You could be coming in hot in a situation like we talked about, and that makes it even trickier to manage, right? Where you're just angry about something. That's what we were talking about last episode when we were talking about this.
Yeah, I think this one goes beyond just sort of anticipating, but it's about also incorporating action. So, for example, it's not enough to understand the frustration of a customer. What's more important is to understand it and then offer a solution. And where appropriate, be proactive about it, right? We've all had the experience where you call a customer service center about something, and for some reason, the right person or the right department is closed for the day. And then they ask you to call back the next day on a different time. And you're like, well, I just articulated this whole thing for the past 20 minutes. Can't your system just make a note and have someone follow up with me the next day when they're in? It should be so simple to do that, right? But it's not set up that way. This is where there's a failure. It's like in the moment you understood the urgency of my problem, but you offered no solution. So the beauty of AI and having some automation and technology behind it is that it can recognize the problem, but then offer a solution. An example of that could be, your flight's delayed or it's even canceled, right? So what do? You got to go stand in line to go take care of that instead of the system saying, sorry, your flight's delayed. Here's 2 other options that you might want to choose from. Or if the flight's canceled, your flight's canceled, we've booked the room for you and we've booked you on the next flight the next morning. Just say yes if you'd like this option, right? I mean, that's being proactive. That's utilizing technology to serve to manage the emotion of the buyer or the customer in that moment. So it's about having swift resolutions to issue, not just recognizing there's an issue and being empathetic about it. That's one level. The next level is being swift to fixing it. That's actually closing the loop.
The key word here is maybe provide help. Like take us from, I've got this emotional baggage I'm coming in a situation with. Are you going to make it better? Provide help. So how are we going to move us from me being emotional? Are you really hearing me?
There's nothing worse. And we're talking about the marketing side of things. I think there's nothing worse than a message speaking directly to your soul. And you're like, oh my gosh, I think this company or this organization or this person understands me. And then you jump on their landing page and the solution either isn't there, or I'm sure we've seen some of this, it's a lead magnet from a so-called guru that is teasing you even further after you gave your email and all your information, hoping you get your one problem solved. But no, it's just it's an online webinar that's automated. That is further that they have this problem, and you just took up 45 minutes of a person's time to try to sell them a high ticket offer. This is how marketing has been the last couple of years, I'm sure. But I think that's a big part right there, is that, okay, you have the message, you're recognizing the person's emotions. Now, are you offering them a swift solution, or are you just dragging them along? Right. And I think that's a big pain point in marketing, is closing that loop of, are you dragging them along, or are you going to give them something of value and alleviate their problem and then earn their business in that way? Right. And I think that's very clear. It's like, okay, you got the great message. Now is your product, service, or what you're selling going to is it empathetically going to solve their problem? Are you even thinking about that? Or are you just trying to get their email, right? So you can use it for your own selfish reasons, right? And that's the challenge. It's like the main goal of a marketer is either to capture the person's information, get them on a nurturing campaign, and then eventually sell them on a high ticket offer. Not a lot of emotions being discussed there. We're all talking about the technical elements of what we're trying to accomplish, not, hey, let's acknowledge this person's emotion, give them something that actually helps them and shows them that we do actually care. We did put in some time to this product. We understand them at the deepest level, and then turning that person into an ambassador after the fact. I think that's missing a lot of times in a lot of campaigns that are being run from a marketing perspective.
But I love this idea of being helpful that you mentioned, Stephen, because I mean, we've all experienced that person that easily offers everything that's wrong with a solution you've presented, but offers zero help in terms of input on how to solve the problem. You can just highlight everything that's broken, but offers nothing to solve the problem. So, and we've all experienced those people. It's like, it's just frustrating. Thanks for highlighting everything that's broken, but do you have a solution? No, like everyone can do that. So, but that one's also one of my favorites too, Ash, where you got the 5-second do it at home solution to something. And 2 hours later, you just listen to a webinar about all kinds of stuff. So,
Yeah, right.
so it's not about being helpful with the intent. It's not like giving you a free vacation, but then you have to sit through 2 hour, a tour or something, right? You solve the problem, first, and then ask me if I want to contribute something greater to it. So that's the key thing is a priority. But that goes back to culture, right? Either you're serving the needs of people, or you're serving the needs of only a select group of people, because even the investors are people, right? The serving the needs of the investors, it's putting someone through a 2 hour webinar before they can actually get what they want. Serving the needs of that person is giving them what they don't want right away. And then knowing that if you solve that problem, they will probably reward you for that. So you can serve both people. Wow, what a concept. That's the beautiful thing of empathy. But culturally, some companies don't get that. So
yeah, so I think this stage is, I hear you, and here's how I'm going to help, and I'm providing the help, right?
Yeah.
You want to get through that stage to where you're getting something of substance. Your time is valuable. You put in the time, you need some value from that. And, whether you're putting in the time or money, whatever it is you want, something of substance, you want some help. So now you've gotten that help. This is the next stage, is the emotion connection stage. So you're establishing an emotional connection with the customer here, and you've given them the product. There are 17 consumption emotions that they've outlined on that. And I think we've talked about some of this in our podcast on surprise and delight. So this is where that really comes into play, is you're hitting that, that surprise and delight tactic. You're giving someone something unexpected. You're giving them something maybe personal. There's this joy around this experience. So now this is this emotion. You're trying to develop these positive emotions toward the brand, versus the opposite side of that, which could be frustration, anger, just got ripped off. There's those whole other slew of emotions. So one of them is going to make a lifetime customer, right? One of them, you're going to have communities built up around you and your business. The other, it's like you're just a one-off and you never want to go through that process again with that company. And now you're going to be, probably bad-mouthing them and all that other stuff. So if you fail on that delivery, there's two different ways these emotions could really go. There's 17 of them, these emotions, but there's really two, good or bad. And so what you really want to do is get to that positive experience. So what are we talking about here on the ground? Tulio, what comes to mind for you?
This is, in this stage, it's really about after, for example, follow-up communication plays a big role. After you resolve the issue, go and ensure that the customer is satisfied. Some companies historically have done this really well. Like at the end of a call, if the problem was solved, they'll say something like, have I provided you great service today, right? I think T-Mobile was one of the companies who implemented that, and that improved their customer satisfaction scores, because it's a subtle way of reminding someone, I did something for you, I solved something for you. And in that act of acknowledgement, you actually create connection. And then this is also about personalizing things, right? With AI, you can do a lot of different permutation and learning, use data sets to be able to personalize offerings, which would resonate better with customers on an emotional level. This is, again, being aware of not just satisfying the transactional need, but the need for an experience and an emotion. And then creating a loop back too. A lot of companies don't do this well enough, but it's so important. Connect with your customers, create a user group, customer group, engage with them, create a specialized group of people that become like your own internal focus group. Get their feedback, ask them about how you can make improvements. The simple act of asking and being vulnerable at that makes you more human as a business. And then it reinforces that emotional bond, right? Because you don't want to be in a relationship with someone that that isn't open to any feedback, right? That's not a good relationship to be in. So you have to be open to feedback, create that loop, personalize it, cater to the needs of that individual, and then have really good communications to follow up. And sending a newsletter or an email every day, that does not qualify as good communication. It's got to be relevant, and it's got to be empathetic, and it's got to be something valuable for the end user.
So Tulu, yeah, when I hear that, I think about, like you mentioned, newsletter, it's not enough. And I think you're right. But it is just one layer of building love into your business, right? It's this one thing I can do, and I can do it better. So good communication via a newsletter isn't enough, but if it's done like really authentically and really genuine, like that credit card merchant services company that I just talked about, they're really, really good at this. Like, they're talking about all the sort of conscious capitalist stuff in their email, in their newsletter, and I get it once a month. And why would you read this? It sounds like the driest thing ever, right? But it's like they do this really, really well to where, oh no, I'm going to read that email, just because they're connecting at such a higher level on there. But they also, they walk the walk in every part of their business. So this is just one part of that business to really build that authentic, community around them. And when I think about that, I also think about like a company like REI or Patagonia or something, where they go kind of above and beyond. Like REI, you could use a tent and then bring it back and say, nah, it wasn't working out for me. And, no problem. And so they've built this following where their customers just love them a ton. And they're really, some of their best ambassadors and best marketing comes from just that ability to delight their customers in a really genuine way and to bring them tremendous value. So now they're our customer for life.
So,
all right, go for it. Yeah,
I was just going to add. To me, it's the secret is to treat your customers like you would a date, right? So you're not going to have a great relationship sending a newsletter to your love interest. Right? You're going to have a great relationship having communication, aligning the way you serve their needs. Perhaps you might even learn their love language, so you can adapt how you speak with them or how you serve them so that they feel desired and wanted. You will be open to feedback and criticism when appropriate, because that creates intimacy and trust. That vulnerability is so key. And so this is all the things we're talking about. If you actually start thinking about what you're trying to do is build intimacy with your customers. That's what long-term relationships are based on, intimacy, right? So if a company begins to treat its customer as if they're trying to establish a marriage, then the same principles that make a great marriage apply to having a great customer relationship. And it's a two-way street. That vulnerability plays a big role too. I admire companies when they mess up something, they openly will say, we screwed up really badly, but we're going to make it right, which is what you would do in a good relationship, right? You'd say, I messed up, but I want to make it right. So these are so important. And that's not going to happen when you're just focused on shareholder value, right? You have to care for people to make this work.
Yeah, and Ash, that's what I was going to just talk about, was transition to that, was like, this is what we were talking about earlier with the higher purpose, right? When you've got your whole company aligned toward this higher purpose. So it's not just a newsletter, it's not just a loyalty program at this stage, it's not just, some social communications or a community you're built. It's this higher purpose where you can align that all together into something that feels real to people, where they want to be a part of it, right? This is what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're talking about nurturing campaigns after the fact, right? And, some of the things that you see today, and we're talking about more of the technical, is when you're creating a nurturing campaign, it's really following up with your customers, seeing how they feel, maybe acknowledging a few of their questions and answers at the surface level, right? Now, we're talking about taking this to a deeper level. So in this case, if we're talking about more of the emotional understanding, it's really, once that customer is bought into your product, following up with them, and first off, acknowledging again that they've made the right decision, that this is going to solve their problem, but then also walking them through step by step, day by day, with different types of emails that could be fired out that is holding their hand through this journey. Again, acknowledging questions that may come up, maybe keeping them accountable if it's a course they may have purchased, right? Where they need to, an email that says, hey, your 4th day since you own this product. How are things going so far? How can we help you? Again, just being that additional partner along the journey, right? Nurturing them and building that long-term relationship after the fact. And I think in doing so, you end up building to that final stage of turning that person into that brand ambassador, right? Where they're speaking to more people about how great they are and how you solve their problem and how you actually care for them at a deeper level. I think when people feel cared for, they want to share that type of experience that they have with someone, with their friends and family and everyone else that's having the same issues. I think that's why when you see these communities that form, there's something that happens when you're going through a really tough situation and your problem gets solved, that you feel compelled to want to help other people that have that problem, right? And I think creating an environment in a nurturing campaign of some kind, after they've bought into your messaging, you're providing the solution, now you're following up to make sure that solution is actually helping them along the way. And then I think those are the steps that lead to that forever customer, as well as that ambassador that can't wait to share how you've helped them with their problem,
I mean, we're talking about Bliss. We're talking about Bliss. That's the whole title of this podcast, right? Bliss, build love into scalable system. If people focus on that, all these stages are covered into this idea of building love, because all this requires love.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to.
The key word here is connection. If you want connection, you have to be loving, right? That's how you just get to it. Yeah. Period. Go for it.
I was going to say too, imagine an email coming in that says, hey, did we meet our end of the bargain? Or, hey, how are we doing? Right? Acknowledging that, we understand your issue. We created a product, but maybe there's something we missed, right? Maybe there's something better that we can do, or how are you doing along this journey? Have you noted, having that kind of conversation in an email campaign or a nurturing or some type of follow-up after the fact brings the whole thing full circle. Not only are their needs being met, but you're taking a step further to make sure that you're meeting your end of the bargain with the product that you promised is going to solve their problem. So there's that element too. I think there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, it's this pursuit, this quest for this deeper connection. So that's it for this one. Hope this made sense and you can really dive into an empathetic, emotion-based customer journey with what you're doing. We will see you on the next Bliss Business Podcast.